Okay. Looks like I'm live. Just going to give you fine folks some time to get the notification and some time to join the stream. It is a little early today. What would it be? I guess 12 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock out on the old Pacific coast. So probably fairly early for the folks out on the West Coast for sure. But we definitely got lots to talk about, lots to cover in terms of this whole Chinese election meddling thing, right? Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's a big deal. Contrary to what Trudeau is trying to say, right? It's definitely a lot to this, and there's a lot more to it. I kind of covered it a fair amount in a live stream just a couple days ago, but I'm going to cover a little bit more of it because there's more information coming to light as it pertains to this Chinese election meddling. I mean, I just can't help but think before I really get into it, I just can't help but think off the top of my head. Think about the wall to wall coverage, especially from the CBC, right? And some of the establishment media as well. But I mean, let's face it, in Canada, when you're talking about the establishment media, I mean, CBC, right? That's the belly of the beast right there when you're talking about the establishment. And yeah, I mean, think about it. When it came to the whole Trump Russia collusion thing, right? And most of that was what social media posts, right? Right? Apparently, a bunch of Russians sitting around posting on social media, which some of that may or may have not have been true. Some of it probably was, but it's not quite the same or on the same level as you know paying off right people or sending busloads of in particular in this case Canada of Chinese students, right? And telling them, oh, if you don't vote for this person, right, you might lose your ability to be a student in Canada. I don't know, whatever the excuses they gave them, but busloads of people coming from different jurisdictions, right, to particular ridings, and the fact that they were paid, right, to influence the outcome of the election, right? That's a big deal. And then we're hearing stuff about payments to the Trudeau Foundation. I mean, if you think about that kind of the extent, right? And the fact that CSIS too, from what I said in the last stream article I covered, I believe it's at a Global News or Globe Mail, two of them basically, chose to become whistleblowers. And think about what it is to be a CSIS agent, right? Secrecy, right, is literally your thing. So for them to come out and obviously to speak, these people have to keep their mouth shut. So to be able to be a whistleblower means it comes with trouble, potential of maybe charges even. Who knows? But I mean, for someone to take that kind of a risk, obviously they're not going to do it willy nilly or just for the hell of it, right? I mean, like I say, think about the wall to wall coverage outlets like the CBC did, and it wasn't even Canadian elections; it was the American elections. And once again, most of that turned out to be a big nothing burger, right? So, wow. But today, I mean, very few articles that you're seeing out of CBC. Well, you got a couple like one for Aaron Wary, which is basically an apologist for the Trudeau government, and then the other one basically suggests, oh yeah, the report was in, investigated by another Trudeau lackey, another Trudeau appointee, and a bunch of public servants, right? That basically said, nope, nothing to see here, more or less. I mean, come on, like this kind of stuff is just unbelievable. But anyways, rather than wait too long, I think there's a few people in the chat already. Let's just see what's going on. But I'm definitely going to have to get into this stuff and get a lot of this covered because there's definitely a lot to deal with. So what's going on here? Reed Green, how you doing, Reed Green? Nice to see you. Thank you for joining the stream. Morning to you. And we got Julianne Johnston. Hello, Julianne Johnston. Thank you for joining the stream. Hi, all. Appreciate that. Anyways, like I say, without further ado, let me just bring on. Oh, wait 1 sec here. They've been wrong against me under the guise of security, likely. Not quite sure what you mean by that. There have been wrongs against me under the guise of no doubt, right? No doubt. Actually, what was that? Actually, before I even bring this up, I just wanted to remind people of something real quick in this one. So let me pull that one off and bring this one up. Just a little reminder, folks. Just a little reminder, because this is the thing I realize is people have very short attention spans. Where is that? Where did that go? Okay, one sec here. Let me get this one in here. Oh, that's why. That's why. Okay, now that is why. Okay, share screen. Okay, bring it on. There we go. So you folks remember this? Let me bring the comment off here. Just one sec. So this was back in, when was this reported? This was September 27th, 2021, right? Military leaders saw pandemic as unique opportunity to test propaganda techniques on Canadians, Forces report says. A plan devised by the Canadian Joint Operations Command relied on propaganda techniques similar to those employed during the Afghanistan War. This was reported by David Pugliese from the Ottawa Citizen. Now, I won't bother going into it. Like I say, I'll make sure to place this in the link in the description below of this live stream as well. But I mean, talking about we know. Just the fact that there's so few of you folks that get to see my live streams. Of course, there is a way to counter that. That's the thing. I always look to ways to counter. I recognize that my content is greatly suppressed, right? Shadow banned, and thank goodness for Trump or Elon taking over Twitter, because now we know it's not just shadow banning, but blacklisting. So we're basically allowed to function in our own little echo chambers. But like I say, the way to get outside of that is there's nothing, absolutely nothing. But that's the thing. You have to have people in your life that actually want to care about this stuff. But you folks can take it upon yourself to share content like my own to help my audience grow, because I've been trying for quite a while now, and it's I don't know. It's not working well in terms of trying to get my stuff out there. I can't. That's one area where I can't do it all, right? But I mean, like I say, there are ways that you can help me, and that's to share my content. But anyways, let me just get into this first article as it pertains, and this part is just hilarious, because just the same old thing, right? It's just rinse and repeat in terms of every time Trudeau's caught with his pants down, or anyone in the Liberal government. This is the go-to canned response, right? Here we go. So this is from the Toronto Sun, from Lily Brian Lilly. This was published February 28th, 2023. Trudeau warns journalists that questions about China's election interference are racist and should stop. I mean, okay, well, it's not just racist, right? But anything that challenges the status quo or the establishment. And yeah, it's not just the Liberals, folks. If you think that Pierre Poilievre is going to be your savior, or even Maxime Bernier, there's no political solution to this stuff at this point. At this point, now, if the culture changes or shifts where Canadians, the plurality or the majority of them, actually care about their freedoms and liberties and are willing to actually not just say it, but actually do something about it, right? And support it actively. And like I say, it's just picking the lesser of the evils. You really genuinely are. Now, I know that's just, sometimes that's a defeatist mentality, but listen, sometimes you just got to call a spade, right? I mean, so, like I say, if you challenge the status quo or the establishment, you're called or labeled racist, right? Or I guess what's the other one? I don't know, white supremacist, or I mean that's another one, right? And what's another insult? A far right nationalist or something, which obviously I don't fit into any of those labels, right? But there are a lot of people that's what they use, and that's basically what the Trudeau Liberals use these days, is to more or less. That's just his way of saying in Trudeauese is sit down and shut up and don't challenge my authority. That's basically what that means. No one at this point has said Hong Dong isn't loyal to Canada. The claim is the Chinese government helped them win an election. Anyway, so I'll just pull that off because there's not a whole lot to it. It's just the fact that Trudeau once again just gotta stoop to the level of calling anyone that's trying to point anything out that you must be racist. You must be racist. Wow, so much fail. That's the thing. If you're a Trudeau supporter or if you're a liberal, fuck, you must be really hanging your head in shame these days. I mean, I get I get the whole team loyalty thing. Listen, as a Canadian who lived in Toronto for, substantial probably half of my life, and I hate to sorry if I upset you folks, but yeah, true liberals remind me a whole lot of like Maple Leaf supporters. No matter how much fail, right? No matter how much let down. Well, at least the Toronto Maple Leafs don't get into so much um stories related to corruption and authoritarianism and tyrannism or trying to, silence and suppress our voice and stuff. I mean, it is just a hockey team after all, so it's a completely different. But this blind loyalty, this allegiance, this that's why I reject collectivism, right? Sorry, it just doesn't work for me. I'm not gonna. Oh, I'm Canadian, therefore I'm just not going to insult other Canadians for their idiocracy, their corruption, or the terrible things they do, right? No, I'm sorry. I'm just not. I call a spade, and that's just the way it goes for me, right? But anyways, sure, you folks are familiar or seen the article coming out of CBC News as it pertains to this foreign interference, this new report, right? But let's get some clarity here because CBC, right? Even though they did kind of allude to it to a degree, um, actually, is this the one here? This might be the CBC one. But yeah, let's deal. So I do have the CBC one that will be included here, but rather than just dealing with the CBC one, let me bring on this one. This is from Global News. Was there foreign interference in the 2021 election? Well, once again, that would be the 2019 and 2021 election. This was reported by Rachel Gilmore, which is basically just, I think, just more or less repeating the same details that we've heard already before. But there's areas in here that I wanted to point out. There was no foreign interference that threatened Canada's ability to have a free and fair election in 2021, according to a report on the protocol designed to inform Canadians in the event of threats in the 2021 federal election. But there were attempts to interfere in the election that didn't meet the threshold for a panel of experts tasked with monitoring risk to the elections to report those attempts to the public, the analysis warns. The finding comes as part of analysis by the Critical Election Incident Public Protocol, which is administered by a panel of senior federal public servants working alongside national security agencies, right? Morris Rosenberg, a former senior public servant, was chosen by the public services to prepare the independent report. And wait till you find out who Morris Rosenberg is, who was a former senior public servant, right? Who was chosen, right, to do this report. Oh, who's Rosenberg? Here we go. Rosenberg also served as CEO of the Trudeau Foundation from 2014 to 2018. In his report, Rosenberg notes that the government of Canada did not detect foreign interference that threatened Canada's ability to have free and fair elections. Right. So, I mean, I'll just, like I said, I just wanted to point that out right there. Lots of articles to get through. I just wanted to, like I say, make sure you folks see who in the hell it is. Just like with Rouleau. I mean, look, if you're the Trudeau government and you're the one or the ones that get to pick who's doing the investigating or who's doing these reports, is it any wonder, is it any coincidence that the ones that's being picked are ones who are very cozy to the Trudeau Liberals or the Liberals in the Liberal Party in particular? No, of course not, right? So biased? Hell yeah, 100% biased. There should be not even a question of that. Okay, here. Did I close up the wrong article? Okay, here's one from the Toronto Sun. This actually will give you a little bit more details here. So let me get to this one. Man picked to write. So this is Toronto Sun. Another Brian Lilly on report on February 27th, 2023. Man picked to write report on Chinese election interference ran Trudeau Foundation when big donations came in from China. One of the defenses Justin Trudeau has used over allegations that China interfered in Canada's elections to get him elected is that we have a process to stop this. Beyond pointing to national security agencies, Trudeau has pointed to the task force of top top public servants who look for election interference. Now, I'll just point out too that this was talked or discussed in another one. I might get to that a little later, but this is basically stuff that's reported on after the fact, not prior to election. So this election meddling and interference happens actually before the actual election takes place. But anyways, let me just read up a little bit more here. Just 7 months ago, after the 2019 election, just 7 months after the 2019 election, that group released its rather vague report. The report on the 2021 report hasn't been released yet. And last week, Trudeau said that wasn't up to him. So this is a report that's not even fresh, right? Faced with new allegations of a specific Liberal MP getting help from China, Trudeau said on Monday the report is ready for politicians, if not the public. There is another report, this one written by Morris Rosenberg, that has been released to both the government and the National Security Intelligence Committee on Parliament, Trudeau said. There is no date to release this report. Oh, that's right. This was actually done before the report came out. And that both in the 2019 and the 2021 elections are election integrity held? Or whatever. How can we know? He wants you to trust him. The man Trudeau mentioned who wrote the report, Morris Rosenberg, is the former head of the Trudeau Foundation. Rosenberg spent decades as senior civil servant running departments for both Liberals and Conservative prime ministers. Just before joining the Trudeau Foundation in 2014, he was the deputy minister at Foreign Affairs under the Harper government. So once again, folks, the people that are willing to keep falling for the left-right thing, I mean, it's not. It's the establishment, right, against those of us who are against the establishment. That's the true divide. That is the true divide. So if you're still playing the left-right game, well, you're failing yourself and anyone else that you're trying to help inform miserably, because people are going to think, oh, we just got to vote for Pierre Poilievre. There might be some small differences and tweaks in how the rulers from the right or the left, right? I say those words very loosely because they're just two wings of the same bird, to be honest with you, right? But I mean, if you don't recognize that this is cultural, this is part of the system, this is institutionalized corruption, right? All the way through, from the top right down to the bottom, and basically all the establishment parties, because they all benefit from many areas of government corruption and collusion and all the craziness that takes place. Still, the Poilievre Conservatives are raising issues with Rosenberg's time at the Trudeau Foundation and the money that came into the organization from China, where Justin Trudeau took over the Liberal leadership. National Post documented several years ago that in 2015, foreign donations rose from 53,000 in 2014 to 428,000 in 2015 and 535,000 in 2016. So what's that, like 10 times, right? Big time, right? And these donations, to me, let's just be honest here. It's just like, it's basically, for me, bribery, donations, right? That's the thing. They use legalese, or they distort the English language to the point where, bribery, corruption, collusion, right? I mean, a complete election overturning it's all just used political or legalese, doublespeak, more or less, to try to tamp down your concerns, right? And I hope it's not working. I really do. But I mean, here you go. So, of course, the Pierre Poilievre Conservatives they're political opportunists. Of course, they're going to jump on this. And I mean, I had hope for Poilievre myself. He said some good stuff earlier on, but yeah, it usually doesn't take me very long, right? Or for them to open their mouth very much for me to realize that, yeah. Don't get your hopes up, right? Or at least, like I say, not in terms of politics or political parties. The exact source of the money is known, but there is proof that some came from China, including Chinese billionaire Bin Zhang, who made a $200,000 donation. Serious questions must be asked about this appointment and whether the Liberals are actually taking this threat against our democracy seriously. Conservatives said in a news release Monday afternoon. Actually, speaking of this, I'll just point out that there's a statement of the president of the foundation that came out. I'll just read that to you. Actually, let me bring it up on the screen here. out in damage control now. So this is from the foundation, Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. Okay, statement from the president of the foundation. Pretty short. It's succinct, to the point, right? The Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation has learned in recent days through the media that there was a potential connection between the Chinese government and a 2016 pledge of 200,000 to be received by the foundation. As an independent, nonpartisan charity, ethics and integrity are among our core values, and we cannot keep any donation that may have been sponsored by a foreign government and would not knowingly do so. In light of these recent allegations, the foundation has refunded to the donor all amounts received with respect to the donation page, right, or pledge. So, right. I mean, to me, this is just damage control, a PR stunt. That's just normal these days, right? It's just par for the course. But is it means now you should trust them? No. And nonpartisan. The Trudeau Foundation is right. Oh yeah, I want to check and make sure my stream's working. Yeah, it's working over there. By the way, folks, live streaming on Odyssey as well. No, it's working good. It's working. So Odyssey stream is working good. And let me just check and make sure it's working on Rumble as well. But in the meantime, let me get this next one set up here. Another article. Oh, yeah, this part here. Let me get to that. Yeah. Bring it up. So I'll read up a little bit more on this here in a minute. Once again, I'm just going to check. See if the live stream's working over here on Rumble. Should be, as far as I know. Sorry, folks, just give me a sec. I've been having issues with my Rumble stream, so I just wanted to check and make sure this one is actually working. By the way, you can always follow me over on Rumble or Odyssey under Canadian Libertarian. Just search Canadian Libertarian, you'll find it. And actually, yeah, it is working. It is working. Beautiful. So that's working. Okay, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Anyways, I unfortunately I'm not subscribed to the Globe Mail. I must have went through my monthly. You get a few free articles, right? And I don't have them. But I just wanted to read this headline here. Chinese donors who funded Trudeau Foundation wanted statue of Mao in Montreal. So this is reported by Nathan Vanderclip, February 28th, 2023. So, we didn't know or whatever. But apparently the Chinese donors who funded Trudeau, who funded Trudeau Foundation wanted a statue. Now, how exactly this is tied in, we'll have to check into it in further articles. But this is basically suggesting that they wanted the Trudeau Foundation to have here for that donation. We want you to put a statue of Mao in Montreal. I mean, Trudeau, Canadians should have took the guy seriously when he said he's a big fan and admirer of China's basic dictatorship. And apparently it's not even just under Xi Jinping, but maybe even Mao, right? And I mean, think about it. A Mao statue. What's that guy responsible for? Was it like 20 million deaths in China, right? Yeah. I suppose that didn't go over. I guess they kind of said, no, that's a bridge too far. We'd be okay with that probably, right? But not everyone's going to be on board with that. So, no, maybe not, right? Maybe not. Right? But I mean, just think of how cozy. Now, even this is something I wanted to point out. I'm going to bring this article up. He still seems to be fence sitting to a degree. I think he's just hedging, to be honest with you, folks. But I did want to just point this out. That Andrew Coyne, and I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many times I see Andrew Coyne reporting on things, and it's just terrible. Such a fail to properly inform Canadians. And he's very, very biased, right? I mean, he still to this day runs around. He's got his Ukraine flag flying in his profile on Twitter. So biased, ideologically driven, the whole spiel, right? But at least he once in a while, I suppose, like I say, hedging. It's like, I don't even he's not willing to get completely on board and back Trudeau. So I'll just read this little bit here. Is it on? Yeah. CSIS is worried. Let me just make this bigger here. CSIS is worried about China interfering in our elections, even if the government isn't. Ooh, how dare you to say something like that against Trudeau, right? Ooh, getting a little brave, are you, Andrew? This was reported February 28, 2023. It was originally a Globe and Mail submission piece, but apparently was put up on National News Watch as well. By now, it will have dawned on many people that we have a full-blown five-alarm national security crisis on our hands. Two possibilities are open to us. Each would be a crisis of a different kind. Either rogue officers within the Canadian Security Intelligence Services have been making a series of sensational and wholly false accusations against the government of Justin Trudeau and certain prominent members of the Liberal Party in an apparent bid to destabilize the government, which, once again, why would CSIS want to do that? It's definitely not in CSIS's mandate to destabilize, the current sitting government. And once again, for even daring to speak out is definitely going to come with consequences and ramifications. So, or here's option two. The substance of the charges is true. That this is easily the more plausible of the scenarios underlines the gravity of the situation. It is dismaying enough that the government of China has been, according to the top secret CSIS documents leaked to the media, systematically interfering in federal elections on behalf of liberals, a sophisticated operation combining disinformation campaigns against conservative candidates with clandestine donations of cash and manpower for liberal candidates. And in at least one case, even choosing the candidate. So, I mean, even if it's one, that's the thing Trudeau run around saying, oh, it didn't affect the outcome of the election, like entirely. Okay. To me, it's like, okay, they didn't manage to, turn all 338 ridings. That means nothing. That was never their goal or in their intention in the first place, as we've already heard by other past reports. Their goal was to make sure that a liberal minority government is what returned. Why? Because if the liberal minority government is in power, they have to fight and bicker and not really get anything done, right? Because they're the constant bickering back and forth between the conservatives and the liberals. So, and everyone else, a minority government, basically makes it really difficult to get things passed, typically. So that was the intention. That was the goal, at least for the CCP or those state actors of China interfering in the election. So first of all, it already worked out to exactly what they wanted. But to me, to use even the slightest hint of an excuse, for anyone to use the excuse that, oh, they weren't completely effective in completely determining the entire outcome of the election. I mean, to me, that's just a gray area that, well, once again, lawyers, politicians, they might want to play in that area, but anyone that actually has morality, knows how to think objectively and clearly or critically, yeah, homie, don't play that, right? Anyways, let me just bring that one off here too. Like I say, I got lots to cover, folks, lots to cover. This one, okay, that's with the and then there's a CBC. I would recommend this too, folks. Actually, let me just bring this up. And of course, it's CBC Radio. Because how many people listen to CBC Radio? Huh? I do. Right? Like I say, very few people. But yeah, I pay attention, right? I want to know what everyone's saying. I got my ear to the ground, right? And yeah, even here, you're having someone who's come on to the CBC, a CBC radio program, and saying stuff like this, right? Ex CSIS boss on China's alleged election meddling. Recent reports by the Globe Mail and Global News, relying on Canadian Security Intelligence Services documents and unnamed intelligence sources, have detailed different ways the Chinese government has allegedly interfered with Canadian elections. On this episode, Dick Fadden, a former director of CSIS and a former national security advisor to both Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau, walks us through the way the spy agency operates in cases like this and what should be done now to ensure Canadian elections are free of foreign meddling. So, once again, I'll make sure all this stuff is linked in the description of this video as well. But listen, here we're going to get to an article that I think is really pressing. Actually, let me just check in this chat here before I continue on, see how you folks are doing. Well, thank you. Great to see you. Well, actually, I can't see you, but thanks. Psyops against your own citizens should be life in jail, right? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. It's like a mind fuck on a daily basis if you're someone like myself, or I suppose like even people like yourself, or anyone that's challenging the status quo. It is a daily mind fuck, right? We're talking the Stanley Milgram experiment, the Stanford prison, all that combined, right? And not just done in a one-off isolated incident, but yeah, basically on a daily basis. I hear you, Reed Green. It's tough. It's tough. Luckily, I'm tougher, right? But I'm not no I'm not gonna pretend that there's been times where it gets really hard on my head. I mean, there's been times. Well, there was times where I just had to take, well, what was it? Last year was where I took months off. I just needed to get away from it for a while because, and of course, when I come back, it's not like anything's changed. Matter of fact, things just continue to get worse, but does me no good, right? I don't enjoy it, but I just got to point out right now that, if people were actually listening to me and not necessarily worrying about playing politics, right? But actually thinking of things from the philosophical standpoint, or what it means to be a free human being, or how do you try to be free, right? All of these things, right? I can't help but think if they were doing that, 10, 11, 12 years ago, when people like myself were trying to warn them about the kind of stuff that's taking place, or even at the very beginning of COVID, you folks that are long-term watchers know I was one of the very few out there that pointed out the because I seen the manipulations of numbers, and I seen how it was playing out, and all the articles, even CBC News, when they would report on that Wuhan lab thing, right? But then not talk about it for months, and very few I would watch for other people to be covering that. Very, very few people covered that connection, right? I did. And all the evidence is in my past live streams. That's the thing. But once again, what can you do when very few people are paying attention to you? It's like screaming in the forest, right? Anybody hear you? No, right? But hey, I'm still gonna try. I'm still gonna try, right? To me, I'm not a quitter. I'm very persistent. And that is one thing I have in spade, is being persistent. I'm gonna keep trying for as long as I possibly can, and just hope that maybe someday that it'll prove fruitful, right? Scotian Southey. Hey, is that you, Matt Matthew Southall? If it is, very nice to see you in the stream, man. Listening along as I work. Keep it up, Bennett. Thank you very much, my friend. If it is, Matthew, I hope your life is doing well. Got a lot of respect for you, man. You're a great guy. Really appreciate all the support. And like I say, reach out to me anytime if you ever want to talk, or if you just want to enjoy not being caught up in the quagmire. I completely understand that as well, right? So wish you a good day too. And thanks, Matt. If that's you, I believe it is. Let's see. Latest false charges stem from masks, but now limiting access by framing me in unsavory light when trying to access local businesses in small community. So people are still messing with you like that, huh? Dang. That is, I listen, it's so much. That's the thing. People have such short attention spans, but if you think back of what took place, what transpired over the last 3 years, especially as it pertains to COVID and the lockdowns and mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, the trucker convoy, the Emergency Act invocation, bank seizures, right? Going after GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go. I mean, that alone, that level of corruption and tyranny, like in any other country, under any other regime or government, people would be like, that is terrible. That's what tyranny looks like. But liberal, leftist Canada, and even, like I say, conservative establishment types, no, they're still willing to play this game, right? To even soft touch in terms of this whole election interference and stuff. Because once again, most of the elections, as we've seen, are the ridings that were affected, or you know, it was more leaning towards the liberals. But we also know that there were some conservatives who were helped as well. So to me, and that's the thing, that shows you it's all about the establishment folks. It's the establishment folks. It's all about maintaining the status quo. And if you look to our southern neighbors, it's the same thing. It's all about maintaining the status quo. It's not about whether you're Republican or Democrat. I mean, Trump was a lifelong Democrat for the most part, but he ran of the Republican Party and he was hated by both or a substantial portion of both parties, right? So, and you would have that exact same thing if you actually had an anti-establishment figure that ran in any politics or one of the main parties in Canada. Well, first of all, they would never allow that, right? They would never allow that in this country. That's the sad reality of that fact. But you would see the exact same thing in this country if there was someone that even could challenge the status quo. Now, I and others might have thought there earlier on because desperation, right? We were all looking and hope, right? We're all hoping. Like something like the PBC. I was a founding member of the PBC or someone like Maxine. But even then, with enough hindsight to think about it, and I was kind of suspicious early on, but once again, I'm not going to deny any potential challenge to the status quo. I'm going to try and support it if I can. And it seemed like at the time it was a good idea. But what I learned subsequent to that is all those thousands and thousands of people have basically all turned their back on me. None of these people watch my content anymore. And Maxime Bernier, if you think about it, he was part of the establishment. He was part of the establishment that lost to another part of the establishment. So he was definitely disgruntled. And I had people even early on tell me, he's not really trying to change things or he's not to be trusted. He's just disgruntled. And I thought, no, I'm not going to listen to people rhetoric like that. Give the man a shot at it. But I got to tell you, folks, the reality that unfolded, I can't say with any amount of certainty one way or the other. But as a libertarian, as someone that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure you folks would agree that at least I stand on principle and have an idea of what the right things that should be done, right? And I talk about objective truth, um, philosophical principles, and the things that really should matter, right? Not this he said, she said, or my party versus this party, but obviously, what I have to say is either not important to those people or isn't something that they want to get on board with. And you got to question people like that. I do. I question people like that. Anyways, let me get back into this, reading some of these articles here. Because like I say, let me close this one up. This particular article here from Microsoft Network, I believe it might have been an AP story. Let me just bring this up here. Yeah. Okay. So let me just read a little bit from this because there's a lot of information in this one. Oh, it was originally a National Post article. Okay. So, first reading, here's what China is accused of doing to the 2021 election. Opinion by Tristan Hopper. Ottawa has been roiled by a series of top secret CSIS reports showing that the Liberal government was aware of a concerted effort by the People's Republic of China to support Liberal candidates and swing the results of the 2021 election. The root of the scandal is the allegation that Justin Trudeau knew a foreign government was trying to meddle in an election, but didn't do anything about it. But how does a foreign government go about trying to toy with Canadian democracy? Below, a guide to just what we know about how China may have affected the vote tally in 2021. And that's another thing in terms of action. Let me cover this. Trudeau literally stood there and denied when asked that question by a reporter, did you know about this? Literally sat there and lied. Shocker, right? Ooh, he lied. Like he's a politician, right? Literally sat there and lied and said, no. Yeah, no. Now, of course, the way the wording, that's the thing with legalese and politicians with their doublespeak. There might be some way that he could skirt the legality, right, of whatever he said. But basically, what he alluded to was, no, I didn't know. Didn't have it on. Well, I don't know. This just come out of the blue, right? But that's not true at all. And actually, let me bring this one up. I'll just use a little bit of this True North video. Andrew Lawton show, by the way. Check out Andrew Lawton show if you haven't already. At least we have a couple alternative media outlets that's challenging the status quo and making a few decent gains in terms of their viewership and stuff. But so this was as it pertains to that particular question that was asked. Oh, I got to bring that up, actually. Sorry, one sec. Stop that one and then add this one. Here we go. Let me just full screen that. Make sure the volume's up here.
Her comments and all sorts of other things lately. But Jody Thomas was testifying before Parliament, and she acknowledged that CSIS gave the Trudeau government and gave Trudeau multiple briefings on election interference.
How many times was the Prime Minister briefed about Beijing's interference?
Inspections? Nah. How's this talk? You just need to listen.
Get the advice you really need.
In the 2019 and 2021 elections.
The Prime Minister would have been briefed on foreign interference in the elections multiple times between 2019 and 2021 and 2022. We will endeavor to get you those dates.
So you will undertake to provide the dates and the agencies and those involved in briefing the Prime Minister?
We will endeavor to get the dates for
every instance that he was briefed in respect of Beijing's election interference.
I will do my best. But again, I was not in this job at the time.
So I mean, there's already one of Trudeau's appointees, someone within the government that's already admitting right there that, yes, he would have been informed. So, I mean, somebody's lying, right? Somebody's definitely lying. Anyways, let me get back to this article because, like I say, there's quite a bit left to it. Okay. China is accused of using underhanded measures to flip heavily Chinese Canadian ridings. The 2021 federal election was notable for being an almost exact carbon copy of the 2019 election. In virtually every corner of Canada, people voted for the exact same party as the last time. The only discernible deviation from this trend was a wave of conservative defeats in heavily Chinese Canadian ridings. Conservatives lost 5 seats, 3 in Metro Vancouver and 2 in the Greater Toronto area, all with disproportionate numbers of Chinese Canadian voters. In each of these places, conservatives hemorrhaged support at rates that were unseen anywhere else in the country. Alice Wong won Richmond Center with a commanding 49% of the vote in 2019. By 2021, she was down 7,000 votes and lost to the Liberal candidate. The trend need not be inherently suspicious. The 2021 election occurred during a particularly low point in Sino-Canadian relations, and the Conservative Party under Aaron O'Toole had pursued a conspicuously hard line against the People's Republic of China. But in November, it was Global News' Sam Cooper who published some of the first official evidence that the unusual outcomes in Chinese Canadian ridings may not have been an accident. Cooper found that CSIS had repeatedly briefed the Trudeau cabinet with warnings that Beijing was actively funneling money and support to its preferred candidates. How is that? Like, to me, this is what I mean. This is election meddling and interference on a scale that makes the whole pretense of the Trump-Russia collusion just pale in comparison, right? And come on, I hope Canadians, I mean, they allowed this 3 years to go by. 3 years to go by under COVID, and other than the brave truckers and the supporters there, right? Which still, if you think about it, even if you're talking about 50,000 people, in a country of what, 38 million now or so, right? Very, very, very pale, like less than what, like 1%, or I mean, just tiny, tiny, tiny numbers of people. After years, after multiple like nasty lockdowns, business closures, look at what they did to the kids and the mask mandates, the vax, just, I mean, the fines, the cops out there, the bylaw officers that are tormenting, harassing, and some of them even assaulting people for doing nothing more than, maybe playing hockey outside or doing some chin-ups at a local park or playing basketball or something. What people just trying to live their lives and outdoor led. Canadians sat back and allowed that to happen, right? And that's another thing. I shared a meme earlier on. All these people that are pumping up the war with Ukraine. Oh yeah, we got to go get Ukraine. You fuckers weren't even brave enough to defend your own freedoms in your own fucking country. And you're fucking going around cheering on, pretending like, oh yeah, we're going to go kick Russia's ass. You wouldn't even stand up to Trudeau with his fucking, like, come on, feminist Trudeau with his pretty pairs of socks that he wears, with shoulders about this wide. This guy, you were scared to death of this guy, right? But oh yeah, you're all big and tough to go on against Russia and Putin. Let me tell you, Putin, not a really tall guy, but he'd mop the floor with fucking Justin Trudeau because actually Putin actually knows, was it judo or something like that? Right? So stop pretending, fakers, wannabes. Not you folks, but you know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. I know it's not you folks. This is the thing. Boy, I really wish I could speak to those people, but relay that message for me, would you? Although the extent of the interference wasn't known at the time, CSIS was reportedly telling Ottawa that the efforts were all coordinated through the United Front Work Department, a coalition of businesses, students, and community groups designed to act as Beijing proxies. The core of the operation was a wave of false Chinese language social media posts. Only days after the 2021 election, the defeated Conservative MP in Stevenson, Richmond East, went public with allegations that his campaign had been targeted by an unusually high number of Chinese language social media posts containing outright falsehoods. That's the thing. Where was the fact checkers at that time, right? Oh no fact checkers apparently at that time. There was one that claimed the Conservatives intended to set up a registry for Chinese Canadians. Another said simply that Kenny Chu had an anti-China background. And since these were all in Chinese on predominantly Chinese social media platforms, they went largely unnoticed by the mainstream media. Oh, that's another thing. Let me bring up, since we're talking about Chinese social media, let me bring this up too. I know I'm all over the place. This is my brain. That's the way it works, folks. Sorry. But yeah, TikTok. Listen, I never set up a TikTok account. Kind of glad I didn't, to be honest with you. But here's another thing. Now, for government to do it for their own government thing, you can see something there, right? You can definitely see something for the banning it for use in government institutions or by government personalities or representatives. Totally makes sense to me. But you should be highly concerned that Canadians would be willing or get on board with banning that social media app entirely. Now, once again, I'm not a fan of it at all. I don't like it, but I'm also a big fan of freedom of speech. I don't believe in banning, because that's the thing. You can ban, if you ban, you're not banning people's ideas or what the thoughts are in their mind or how they think. You can't do that. So you silence them here, they just find somewhere else, right? So it's just whack-a-mole, this banning, this cancel culture, such a fail on so many levels. But anyways, let me continue on. There was one that claimed China-linked actors took an active role in seeking to influence the September 2021 parliamentary election in Canada, displaying signs of coordinated campaigns to influence behavior among the Chinese diaspora, read a comprehensive November 2021 report by the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Is that the one that was appointed or done by Trudeau appointed folks? Because once again, even that might not be fully informative. Still, there was no immediate reason to believe this was the result of a Chinese disinformation campaign. A skeptical take by David Mastraki in November, for instance, zeroed in on one alleged disinformation post whose author worked for a translation company that had a working relationship with Chinese government officials. A review of the company makes it clear the relationship that its clients include Chinese government agencies, which is hardly surprising given that it's a translation company, he wrote. We judge Chinese disinformation posts to be primarily organic and minimally resourced, however, cannot preclude the possibility of low-level interference efforts, was the lukewarm assessment of a review by the McGill-based Media Ecosystem Observatory. So once again, these are just people with opinions, right? This isn't CSIS that has the information. So, of course, there's going to be people with all kinds of political backgrounds and perspectives and biases. But last week, the Globe Mail revealed that somebody was doing this kind of work on behalf of Beijing and were working hard to cover their tracks. The report cited CSIS documents showing that China was pressuring its consulates to create strategies to leverage politically active Chinese community members and associations within Canadian society. What's more, the strategy was to do it while obfuscating links to the People's Republic of China, right? Trying to cover their tracks. PRC money and volunteers were also funneled to Liberal candidates. Last September, investigative reporter Bob Mackett noticed that several volunteers with a Vancouver-based Chinese-Canadian Get Out the Vote organization all appeared to have close ties to pro-Beijing nonprofits. The Chinese Canadians Go to Vote Association, which appeared at events alongside Liberal candidate Pam Baines, included Wu Jiaming, executive director or executive chairman of the Canada-China City Friendship Association, a group known for its defense of PRC positions. Like in the PRC is no barrier to participating in a Canadian election campaign. Of course, but here again, CSIS has told Ottawa that Chinese consulates are illegally, right? The person, this reporter, is trying to skate that line. But once again, the information is all here. CSIS reports cited by the Globe Mail also report that CSIS reports, where did that go? Oh, here we go. But here again, CSIS has told Ottawa that Chinese consulates are illegally reimbursing campaign donations made to favorite candidates. CSIS reports cited by the Globe and Mail also report a tactic of having business owners hire Chinese students in order to assign them to volunteer in election campaigns or electoral campaigns on a full-time basis. And as with the other report has noted, is busing them, right, to particular ridings. China almost certainly didn't affect the final outcome, but that's largely due to luck. First, the good news. Even if China's attempt to subvert Canadian democracy was indeed a stunning success in every way, it's unlikely that the operation had any measurable effect on the final outcome, namely a Liberal minority with the Conservatives in opposition. What? I mean, you really got to read that one again, right? The good news, even if China's attempt to subvert Canadian democracy was indeed a stunning success in every way, it's unlikely that the operation had any measurable effect on the final outcome, namely a Liberal minority with the. Well, that is what happened. The only difference is what changed that, right, was the NDP, that handshake with Trudeau. And don't worry, we'll keep you in power. I'll butter your bread, you butter mine, right? But I mean, come on. The Liberals ultimately clinched victory with a margin of 31 seats, rendering it largely irrelevant that the country's half dozen or so predominantly Chinese Canadian ridings had voted against the grain. So once again, this is an excuse of they were incompetent. Well, could you imagine if you went in to rob a store or rob a bank? In reality, banks are the ones that rob us these days. But anyways, I digress. But could you imagine you go in to rob a store, you tripped over, the chip cart or something, your gun come out of your hand, some customer in there tackles you and holds you there till the cops come and you didn't get away with the loot. Oh, well, are they going to say, oh, well, there, no crime was committed? No. You were trying, just because you were foiled or you were, clumsy or incompetent, right? That's not an excuse. What was the intention? We know what the intention was to interfere in Canada's election. That to me is what matters. Whether they were successful or how successful they were, that's kind of a moot point, right? But once again, when politics rules the day, not principles, well, this is the kind of rhetoric you get. Even for those who are trying to somewhat inform us. In October 2021, occasional conservative strategist Karama Veer Lau even published an analysis in The Line, pouring cold water on the theory that Chinese disinformation had been all that persuasive. Lau pulled up electoral data showing it was almost exclusively Cantonese-speaking communities, composed largely of immigrants from Hong Kong who turned on the Tories, while Mandarin-speaking communities voted much the same as in 2019. If foreign interference was successful, we should have seen equivalent swings against CBC in both Mandarin and Cantonese-speaking communities, he wrote. Of course, any number of Canadian federal election outcomes have hinged on fewer than a handful of seats in either direction. So it's not completely beyond the pale to imagine that if Canada had seen an election as close as, say, 1972, that we'd currently have a government who owed its position in part to foreign meddling, right? So there's that, right? Now, this part, like I say, let's get to this one. This is another thing. And I mean, with the RCMP, do you really need any more evidence of just how corrupt that organization is? Well, if you do, here you go. I'll give you some more. So this one's from CBC, being reported by John Paul Tasker, March the 1st. RCMP not investigating 2021 election meddling allegations, MPs told. A government official confirmed the RCMP is not investigating reports of election interference. Not even going to bother investigating it. I mean, that to me is like, you're not even going to put on at least a fake show like rouleau. I mean, come on, at least do a rouleau, right? That should be a new verb. You should at least do a rouleau and go through the whole rigmarole of at least pretending to try to hold government to account, right? But no, in this case, not even going to try it. While multiple media reports have detailed allegations of foreign interference, including attempts to co-opt candidates, the top bureaucrat at the Department of Public Safety said Wednesday there are no active RCMP investigations underway into the last election. I can confirm that the RCMP is not investigating any of the allegations that are arising from the last election, Sean Tupper, Deputy Minister of the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, told a committee of MPs studying foreign election interference. Jody Thomas, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, told MPs on the procedure and House Affairs Committee that she and other officials have routinely briefed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about election interference by China. She called Beijing the greatest threat and other bad actors like Russia or Iran. Thomas said there were foreign interference attempts in 2019 and 2021. So, right there. Anyways, I'll continue on. She declined to provide specifics about the interference, saying it would be inappropriate in light of strict national security laws that require secrecy. The unlawful sharing of information and inappropriate sharing of information, I believe, jeopardizes our national security. It jeopardizes institutions and puts people at unnecessary risk and is very concerning, Thomas told MPs. While there are no pending criminal investigations, Thomas did say that the federal government is taking concrete steps to strengthen our counter-foreign interference approach, including by making sure that those who engage in such activities face consequences, right? The absence of an active criminal probe does not mean there wasn't serious misconduct by China or other foreign actors in the last two federal elections or federal campaigns. National security experts have said it's difficult to use intelligence gathered by agencies like CSIS in the course of a criminal matter. The standards of the court of law are different from the standards used by gathering of intelligence. So that's the thing. They have to use these basically measures that are basically illegal or invasions of privacy and stuff. So, because of that, we just can't find out about these things. So, I mean, when the rules are all written so that no matter what, when this kind of stuff can be taking place, no criminal investigation, no way truly to hold anyone to account, what does it really mean in the day? What really? Laws, I got to tell you, folks, rules and regulations, those are for peons, not for the ruling class. Conservative MPs on the House Affairs Committee raised concerns about the absence of criminal charges for foreign interference. They suggest the lack of such charges leaves the impression that nefarious actors can operate with impunity. Adam Fisher, Director General of Intelligence Assessments at CSIS, said that this is an issue that may require a legislative fix. Former CSIS Director Richard Fadden told CBC News Network Power and Politics that he is somewhat surprised at the lack of criminal charges. So even former CSIS Director Richard Fadden is surprised at the lack of criminal charges. Fadden said that while CSIS investigations might not provide enough evidence to hit the high bar required for criminal charges, he was surprised the RCMP is not investigating in light of recent media reports alleging foreign interference. So once again, if you do anything wrong, right, the bar is not very high to charge you for a crime. mean, hell, I had a few beer on my four-wheeler, right? What was it? Oh, dozen years or so ago. And all they needed was this pretense that you smell like I mean, pretty low bar for anyone to get charged criminally and have your entire life, your livelihood, and stuff like that upended. But hey, for this kind of stuff, no, right? If everything that was written by your colleagues in the media is taken as accurate, I'm a little bit surprised that there's not something there, Fadden told host David Cochran. Tara Denham is a member of Security Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force, a body set up to monitor election interference. She told MPs that the task force was aware that anti-conservative messages were widely distributed on WeChat, a Chinese social media app, during the last election. But Denham said site couldn't determine whether those messages came from foreign sources. Former conservative BC MP Kenny Chu, who has been a vocal critic of China, has said he was the target of propaganda and disinformation on WeChat during the last election campaign. He lost his Vancouver area seat to the Liberal candidate and has claimed China played a role in that defeat. Also, Wednesday, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and the NDP demanded that the federal government launch a public inquiry into allegations that the regime in Beijing interfered in two recent federal elections. So once again, even Pierre Poilievre, right? They want to launch a public inquiry. Oh, so basically, you're going to appoint a bunch of appointees, because who's going to be the one in charge of that, right? So Trudeau's going to appoint some more rouleaus to investigate and determine he did nothing wrong. And this is like, even by the people who should be, the NDP and the Conservatives, should be against this stuff, right? But apparently not. Once again, folks, it's us versus the establishment. Okay, let me just. Poilievre said session inquiry should be limited to China's alleged actions. The NDP motion on the matter, meanwhile, calls for an inquiry into all foreign interference in Canada's democratic process. Poilievre said a public inquiry should be chaired by someone who's acceptable to all political parties to ensure its independence. Once again, how many of these people, we all know about the honeypot, the bribery, right? The blackmail. How many people from the establishment, basically have to toe the line, pretend that they're outraged and concerned, but maybe they don't want to get any revelations in terms of maybe some of their past acts, right? Or deeds brought to light either. Who's to say? He said in a recent report on the matter authored by Morris Rosenberg was unacceptable because Rosenberg previously held a role with the Trudeau Foundation, a nonprofit named for the Prime Minister's father. He did one thing. He appointed a panel and had a report written by someone who is the former head of the Trudeau Foundation. That's it. No foreign influence registry, no laws to protect the Canadian diaspora community, no action against foreign interference, and no effort to inform the Canadian people that all this was happening to our democracy. So basically, this is just repeating of other articles. Okay, so here we go. China has been accused of meddling in Canada's elections. A Chinese national was mysterious. So listen to this. So a vast campaign of foreign influence. China has been accused of meddling in Canada's elections. A Chinese national was mysteriously fired from Canada's National Microbiology Lab. Remember that? Yeah, I covered it earlier on. And actually, I've got I'm going to be doing another live stream soon covering that whole because some new evidence has come to light in terms of the Wuhan lab. But we're hearing a lot about the Wuhan lab in China, right? But we're not hearing about the connection that comes from that Wuhan lab and Canada in Winnipeg, our only level 4 lab in this country, where, a lot of this stuff was samples of very deadly contagions and viruses were being brought back and forth between Winnipeg, the Winnipeg lab, and over there in Wuhan. So you folks that watch my content are probably already privy to that information, aware of it, but there's going to be new information coming late, and I'll be covering that as well. So yeah, let's not forget about that. A Chinese national working at Hydro-Quebec has been criminally charged for alleged economic espionage. Kind of a big deal. China's ambassador threatened MPs and senators with forceful measures as payback for parliaments describing China's treatment of its Uyghur minority as a genocide. And Beijing arbitrarily detained 2 Canadians for more than 1,000 days. Yeah, let's not forget about the 2 Michaels, right? Last fall, Global News reported that Trudeau had been briefed by national security officials about a vast campaign of foreign influence in Canadian politics, a campaign that allegedly included a clandestine network of candidates in the 2019 election, a movement to place agents into the offices of MPs in order to influence policy, an attempt to co-opt and corrupt former Canadian officials to gain leverage in Ottawa, and a campaign to punish Canadian politicians whom the People's Republic of China view as threats to its interests. Caesar reportedly told Trudeau that China's consulate in Toronto floated cash to at least 11 federal election candidates and numerous Beijing operatives who worked as campaign staffers. Right? Last month, the Globe Mail reported that China again employed a sophisticated strategy to disrupt Canada's democracy in the 2021 election campaign because Chinese diplomats and their proxies backed the re-election of Justin Trudeau's Liberals. Also in February, Global News reported, citing unnamed sources, the national security officials briefed Trudeau about Liberal MP Hang Dong. News outlet said CSIS has identified Dong as a witting affiliate in China's election interference networks. Global also reported Dong was one of the 11 candidates allegedly supported by Beijing in the 2019 election. Now, I'll just point this out to you folks that you're not aware of. Some of you may be shocked as CBC is really reporting that. Well, let me tell you, they reported on the bank bailouts. They reported on the, a lot of the stuff in terms of the lies and statistical falsehoods that were used to nudge or to coerce Canadians into, going with the whole COVID lockdowns, mask mandates, vax mandates. Even CBC covered that too. But what it is they'll get one or two of the. I've been watching the CBC for long enough and listening, so they're at least smart enough in there to cover their asses. So while huge portions of that organization, reporters and the CBC network and CBC News articles and CBC, the national and television. Well, they'll use their opinion makers and their thought leaders and their rhetoric to convince Canadians to believe that they're the one, they're informing you, when in reality they're deceiving you and using the term expert loosely, right? The term expert these days, how badly have they destroyed that? But using the term expert and bringing on these panelists and like I say, political pundits to basically be apologists and the propaganda arm of the Trudeau government. But at the same time, they'll have these odd, obscure articles or like radio programs where you'll get a little bit of truth, but the overwhelming information drowns out that little tidbit of truth that you might get. That's how they operate. And I can understand, if you think about it, they got lots of lawyers and there's been bills that have been written where you can use propaganda in Canada, not just Canada, the US, Bill C-51, the US with the Patriot Act and the NDAA. There have been legislation written that gives the media and politicians, a means or the excuse to be able to misrepresent facts or misinform Canadians, use propaganda. So while they're propagandizing the masses, they're slipping in a little bit of truth, but it's so obscure and so few people pay attention like I do that most of the people they just never hear of it. Or they just never know about it. Anyway, so that will be placed in the description as well. Let me get back into the chat here, see what you folks are up to. Latest false charges stem from mass, but now limited access. But okay, sorry, I read that one already. Well, thank you very much, Julian. Appreciate that. Okay, just scrolling down. It seems PP won't say Chinese Communist Party, but replaces Chinese with Beijing. Yeah, like I say, I don't have any trust in any of the establishment parties or those who represent it. Right? You just can't. You just can't these days. It's just unwise to do so. Listening while welding. Thanks for the work entertainment. Right on, Justin Turdo. Appreciate that. Yeah, listening while welding. Hey, be careful there. But yeah, thanks for watching, Justin. Appreciate that. Oh, not welding, working. I'm not sure what that was. Okay. Don't give up. It will pay off. Oh, probably talking to me. Well, appreciate that, Reed Green. And yeah, I'm definitely not giving up. Okay, let me just scroll down here a little bit. This is totally bonkers, like corruption on steroids, right? Thanks for joining the stream, Freedom Prospector. Yeah, I hear you. But that's the thing, as you're probably well aware of. There's just in the last, like I say, the last 3 years, never mind the last 12 years of the kind of stuff that I've tried to inform Canadians about. It's like at this point in time, what does it take to shock the Canadian population or to wake them out of their slumber? I really don't know. I really don't know, folks. I'm really curious. I don't understand. The part that is disgusting, you know what? Hopefully at some point in time in the future, we all, everything will be properly explained and we'll all finally have our, oh, okay. I mean, we're suspicious. I'm suspicious, but because I don't like saying things that I don't have 100% factual knowledge about, I keep most of my suspicions, inside, right? The part that is disgusting, the RCMP will do nothing at all. Nothing. Yeah, I'm with you, Jim McCool. Cole, really appreciate you joining the stream. Dude, yeah, I'm with you there. Hey, Enrica Rica. Hello, how you doing? Hola. Hola, Bennett. Hello. Rika, thank you for joining the stream. Really appreciate that. Ben White. Hey, nice to see you again. Hey, Ben White, nice to see you in the stream too. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate that. Busing in elderly and foreign exchange students with the threat of your student visa being revoked. That is totally bonkers. 0% ethics just bought and paid for treason. Yeah, right there with you, Freedom Prospector. Hey, BC here as well. Yes, nice to see some BC folks. Really good to see that some folks on the West Coast. Sure, some of you folks might be familiar. Let me just say right now, if you are from BC, some of you folks probably familiar with Josh Steffler, right? I remember him from way back in the day with the Freedom Free for All, right? And what was it on one of those public cable television shows, right? Anyways, Tim Mullen is back and he's doing some more not live streams as of yet. He's got a show basically like an hour. He typically tries to go for about an hour long show. It's called the Tim Mullen Show. And I was on that, check that out. We were talking about the Chinese election interference on that stream as well. And he's done a few others since then. He had Manuel Pascual. By the way, Manuel, if you get a chance to see this, you did a real good job on Tim's show there, articulating your points. Good job, man. And anyway, so Tim had interviewed Josh Steffler, and he just uploaded that. So check that out. And Josh, got to say, I'm real proud of him. He's, he was mentioned on there. He reached 299.7, I think he said, pounds. So basically hitting up on 300 pounds. And he's like, that's enough, right? No more. And he's been reading the book. Where is that? Oh, here it is. And he was mentioned about the book of, not sure if you folks have seen or read that yourself. I actually bought it based on his recommendations. It's Meditations, the philosophy classic, Marcus Aurelius, about stoicism and stuff, right? Anyways, and apparently it's done wonders for him, and of course his own resolve. But I believe he's down to now like around 218, 219 pounds. So he's basically lost 80 pounds, doing real well, working out. And you got to remember, this guy's a baker, right? A good baker from what I hear too. So it's got to be tough for a baker, right, to lose weight because he's constantly around that stuff all the time. So kudos to Josh for doing what he's doing. And like I say, that's very inspiring messages. And actually, that's the kind of stuff I like to see and hear today because we get enough crap, right? It's nice to get some good positive message. But anyways, that talk of BC just kind of remind me of that. Let me just continue on here, folks. Oliver, Colin M, thanks for joining the stream. Colin, really appreciate that. I'm just scrolling down here, folks. See who else. Hey, GTO Mama, how you doing, GTO Mama? Hey, Benedict, all really appreciate you joining the stream as well. The elections need to be on decentralized blockchain so all the people can see 100% transparency. Freedom Prospector. That would be great. That's a good suggestion, right? Until the state's going to exist, right? So it would be at least a way to hold people to account, but to prevent manipulation from taking place, or at least try to, right? But I'll just point this out to you, Freedom Prospector. Once again, sorry to rain on the parade, but I think even then you would find out that it really wouldn't change a whole lot. See, what I've known for quite some time is, yes, this Chinese election meddling and interference, terrible, bad stuff, right? No fan of it whatsoever. But even in spite or in the absence of external meddling of foreign countries such as China, you would quickly find out that the plurality, or at least those that comprise and give the establishment, their majority or minority governments, you got to remember there's a lot of Canadians in this country who heavily rely on and greatly benefit from the status quo. Even those that maybe not necessarily in their heart of heart, in their soul, they're probably not a big fan of the way, they are benefited. They probably see, if they have any ethics whatsoever, right? Or have morality or principles means anything, they probably recognize it. Oh, I really shouldn't. But as a libertarian, as someone that just understands humans are humans, right? I don't believe in this utopian where you're just going to create humanity in your image. No, that's the point of the philosophy of liberty and stuff, is you don't have to fall for these damn dystopian or utopian scenarios, right? You just acknowledge, or Austrian economics, you just deal with humanity and reality for what it is. And that, I tell you, that has always paid dividends for me. But you would find out that actually you would still end up with a majority of the population, or at least the ones that get to, choose who's our rulers, would still be doing the same thing. You would still have liberal governments. You would still have the estate. It wouldn't change a whole lot. It really wouldn't. This is the thing. And we were warned by people hundreds of years ago to keep government shrunken and contained to the point where it doesn't get captured by special interest groups or incentivize this kind of corruption and bad behavior, right? Because that's basically what happens, right? When you grow government. Because even people who didn't normally or necessarily want to get involved in government, well, if you recognize your opponents are going to use the government to clobber you over the head, well, that's going to entice you to jump into the fray and to grow the government or to find government to benefit in you way against your counterparts. So that's, like I say, that's the race to the bottom. That's the race to tyranny. That is, at the end, that's the race to full on totalitarianism. And every country that has ever gone down that path. And I just, like I say, I just don't see a political solution to it. What I do see is our ability to do our own little things in our own little space to affect the culture in this country in our own little areas. That's where we do have, that ability. Start local, do as much as you can, right? To create a culture of people who generally, place liberty at the forefront, right? Because until that happens, folks, and the best way to help that too, right, is we can only do so much. We recognize a lot of people, the masses, are cult of personality types, right? They're always looking for someone to lead them. So really, that's another thing. People in leadership positions in terms of arts and entertainment, movie, music, television. You got people like Tom McDonald, another Canadian music artist. He's got some great messaging in his music. So there's definitely millions of Canadians who have, at least in one area of their life, heard some good messages and great things that are being talked about. But we need more of that, right? You can't have, if you just have a one off or the odd one, right? You're greatly outnumbered. We need more and more people who are going to try to create that kind of culture that respects individual liberty, right? And freedom of speech. And it has to start, like I say, not just local, but using, your skills, your talents, and your abilities to lead by example. Same with people in business. Do what you can to create the freest environment possible for your customer, like your consumers, your employees. Fight against big government, right? So instead of, like, think about it, there's people right now that are trying to, get government, and Trudeau Liberals introduced universal basic income. So far, right? That's kind of still sitting on the back burner, right? But the reason why people are clamoring, or a substantial, or at least a sizable portion of Canadians are clamoring for a universal basic income, is because they're suffering terribly. So as an employer, right, unless you want to end up getting stuck in a full-on socialist hellhole, do what you can. I know the central banker's been telling you, oh, don't give raises. Oh, that'll keep inflation high. Listen, don't allow a central planner to be the one that dominates and dictates, what's right and wrong. Use your own common sense and judgment, and recognize that your employees, especially with the amount of inflation in comparison to the wages they're at, they're losing money. Canadians on a regular basis now are losing. It's like taking a pay cut on a regular basis. That's not right. And as an employer, like, that can only go so far. Right now, government might be able to find ways where government can protect your bottom line. But once again, in the long run, you really need to be thinking about things at that macro level. Anyways, let me just move on here. But hey, hello, GTO mama. That's the best way to get them out there. What's that? Yeah. Anyway, so in terms of the blockchain, once again, not against that idea. I think it's actually a great idea. I just don't think that alone is going to be enough. But hey, every little bit counts. Exactly, man. And isn't it also interesting that when any business or government agent actor usually has to be held privately accountable with suits, which, by the way, they say they grant immunity too often. Yeah. Yep. For sure. Well, this is the thing, right? People are getting captured no matter even if they want it or not. It's just what happens. Yeah, white collar crime pays pretty good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got it, GTO mama. You understand. Yeah, the truth is mentioned once, the lie is repeated ad nauseum. CBC business. Exactly. Well said, GTO. That's bang on right there. Bang on. Anyways, let me get back. There's some more, like I say. So that was the fact that the RCMP is not investigating. Let me pull that one off. Here's this part. I'm going to bring it up about the donations. So this is another CBC article. Once again, we're not going to worry about how it's presented. What matters is the kind of information that's contained. So Trudeau Foundation, notice it's under the political section too, right? Trudeau Foundation returning $200K to Beijing linked donor. Conservatives suggest donation calls recent report on election interference into question. The Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation has returned a donation worth thousands of dollars made by an advisor to the Chinese government. In 2016, Zhang Bing, a wealthy Chinese businessman advisor to the Chinese government, made a donation to the foundation worth $200,000. Thousands of dollars, $200,000. That's quite a few $1,000s, right? A story published by the Globe and Mail on Tuesday suggests that Canadian security officials linked that donation back to the Chinese government. The CBC, part of them are like, damn it. Now we got to report that too, right? But I mean, if you look like I do every day and you go on CBC's website, wall-to-wall coverage of Zelensky and Ukraine, right? Or, race or identity politics. I mean, that's all over the place. But very, very few mentions or stories as it pertains to this. And think about it. Like I said, I posted a meme there showing Trudeau and Stephen Harper, little thought experiment. Could you imagine, right? Imagine that instead of the Trudeau Liberals, like this whole Chinese election thing, it wasn't the Trudeau Liberals, but the Harper Conservatives who benefit from that. Can you imagine how the CBC would be covering that? It'd be, like I say, the first 20 fucking articles would be like nothing but Harper's corrupt. This government is illegitimate. I mean, just think about how they covered the Trump thing, right? And then just think about that in their own backyard against Harper, the man that they hated so much, right? Or at least a lot of them let on they did, for sure. I mean, think about like how that would play out if it was the Harper Conservatives. Or like liberal Canada or leftist or progressive Canada, how outraged and up in arms they would be at the mere prospect. Hypocrisy, it rules the day. Foundation President Pascal Fournier released a statement on Wednesday saying that in light of the Globe's reporting, the foundation, which funds and promotes academic and public interest research, has reimbursed Zhang the full amount of the donation. As an independent, so we already got that. That's just the letter, right? Anyway, so let's pull that one off. Yeah, we got a good one here. Actually, no, we already covered that. So this is a National Post article with the headline, Trudeau was regularly briefed on foreign interference in elections. National Security Advisor says. Jody Thomas testified to a Commons committee that the problem is growing with adversaries finding innovative ways to meddle. So I wonder if there's some good stuff in this here. Maybe I'll just read a little bit of it here, folks. Might as well, right? Might as well. Where are we at? An hour and 26 minutes. Try not to go too long with these things, but yeah, let's just get a little bit here. Let's just get a little bit. I might go up to 2 hours. Why not, right? Why not? Thomas said the problem of foreign interference comes from many countries, but China is currently the most aggressive player. We cannot paint an overly optimistic picture. Things change. Tools and methods change. Our adversaries adapt quickly and find innovative ways to interfere in our affairs. So we must continue to learn, she said. Sean Tupper, Deputy Minister of Public Safety, also told the committee of MPs there's a growing problem. It's more pervasive, it's more aggressive, and the potential for damage to our democracies is that much more serious. I would say it's already damaged. Topper confirmed that the RCMP does not have any criminal investigation stemming from the 2019 or 2021 elections. Thomas and all the security intelligence officials who testified declined to confirm the specifics of media reports that have been based on documents from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service leaked to journalists. But she said there's a broad problem. So, NDAAs, national security concerns. There's always an excuse for mum's the word, right? For not properly informing Canadians. Are you sick of that? Whether it's a question period or, reporter scrums or aren't Canadian? You would think that Canadians would be sick and fucking tired of never being able to be properly informed. But what the hell is the point of the media for, right? She cautioned, the unlawful sharing of information and the inappropriate sharing of information, I believe, jeopardizes our national security. It jeopardizes institutions. It puts people at risk, both employees and subjects of investigation, she said. The committee also heard from members of security and intelligence threats to election task force. The task force is designed to collect information during the elections about possible foreign interference and report it to a panel of senior bureaucrats who then decide on whether or not to go public. Tara Denham, a director, I think we already covered this one, right? A director of global affairs who served on the task force said sorting out misinformation is an election that is being spread by Canadians from misinformation that might be amplified by foreign powers is a very difficult line to draw. Could be a foreign entity that is using proxies in different ways to amplify the content, but you need to find the link back to a foreign entity that's directing that, she said. She said they did see misinformation being spread about the Conservatives, but didn't see a clear indication it was being amplified by a foreign power. Adam Fisher, a director with CSIS, confirmed that they do share information with law enforcement, but he cautioned that it is not always easy to use CSIS information in courts. The intelligence that's being gathered by the service and other agencies is shared with law enforcement. RCMP, the Commissioner of Elections Canada, he said, there's some real challenges in that respect in terms of transmitting intelligence into evidence and into a law enforcement arena. So once again, government makes it so impossible for us Canadians to be properly informed. That to me is a major, major problem. Now, this next one here, I'll just point out, maybe I'll just show the headline because it's just kind of letting us know about something here, that whether this is going to mean anything or it's just another dog and pony show, I don't know, but it's Canada's spy agency head set to testify on foreign election interference. Actually, maybe I'll play a little bit of this video. Yeah, maybe I'll play.
Another major call for a further look into foreign interference.
It calls on the government of Canada to launch a national public inquiry into allegations of foreign interference in Canada's democratic system.
The NDP motion at the House of Commons committee studying the issue, finding support from a political foe.
It has to be public. We can't simply bury it behind closed doors and have it in secret while Canadians are left in the dark.
The Conservatives and NDP push for a public inquiry comes after Global News first reported the Chinese consul in Toronto allegedly sent 2 busloads of Chinese Canadian seniors to vote for current Liberal MP Han Dong during his 2019 nomination meeting in Don Valley North, according to a combination of intelligence sources and CSIS documents. Sources also say CSIS suspected the Chinese international students with faked addresses were bussed in and told if they didn't support Dong, they could lose their student visa. Dong and the Liberal Party of Canada deny the allegations and say the nomination rules were followed, but sources say CSIS warned senior Liberal Party of Canada staff about Dong. Despite that, Justin Trudeau signed his nomination papers to run for the Liberal Party. Today, the Prime Minister wouldn't say if he was informed Dong was an alleged CSIS target.
We are constantly being engaged with by our security agencies around how to keep safe from foreign interference.
Trudeau's national security advisor would not discuss the substance of the allegations against Dong.
I'm not going to comment on information that was inappropriately obtained. The concept and the problem and the severity of foreign interference is well documented.
Interference that has become more aggressive over the past 5 years.
We believe this threat is on the rise and increasingly complex. The greatest foreign interference threat to Canada comes from the People's Republic of China.
While the threats may be rising, the RCMP say they're not reviewing any alleged interference from 2021.
I can confirm that the RCMP is not investigating any of the allegations that are arising from the last election.
The committee will decide tomorrow if it will call for a public inquiry, but the vote is non-binding, meaning it will be up to the Prime Minister and Cabinet to decide if they want to hold one. And so far, Jeff, Trudeau has resisted those calls.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. And a new poll shows that a majority of Canadians believe that China did attempt to meddle in recent federal elections. The survey from the Angus Reid Institute found 2/3 of Canadians say Beijing either definitely or probably tried to interfere. 53% feel the Chinese government's alleged interference attempts represent a serious threat to democracy. And more than half say the Liberal government has not been strong enough in its response to China and needs to do more to prevent foreign meddling. The Prime Minister refusing calls for a public inquiry pointed to those committee hearings underway in Ottawa and to a report released late yesterday that looked at how the country dealt with possible interference in the last federal election. Our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, has been digging into that report. So, David, what does it tell us about any foreign meddling in that 2021 election?
Well, I'll tell you, the Prime Minister believes that that report tells us something.
The latest review on 2021 just came out and confirms that our election integrity held in 2021 as it did in 2019.
But it is not quite that clear-cut, Jeff. That report that came out late Monday, it was not an investigation into interference into Canada's overall electoral process. It was simply a review of a process put in place for the 5-week-long 2021 election. The report itself notes it cannot address allegations of interference before the campaign started, such as in nomination meetings or at any time outside that very specific 5-week election period. Now, those who want a public inquiry into foreign interference they want to examine activities before the election campaign started. Again, the report the PM refers to only looks at some very narrow procedural issues that happened during the campaign. Now, the report looked at a system that gives 5 senior bureaucrats the authority to decide first if there has been a major incident of election interference, and then to warn the public. Now, in between elections, that authority rests with elected officials, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Public Safety, and so on. But it would not be appropriate during the actual election to have politicians competing for votes decide when or if to warn the public about election interference. So the report concludes that those 5 bureaucrats did their job well in 2021, and they did not detect major incidents of interference. The report also calls for changes to make the system work better, to improve transparency, to improve communications, and to make public minor incidents of election interference. And the report says the government should start making those changes right now so that the bureaucracy, political parties, and most of all, voters are better prepared to spot election interference and know how to deal with it. Jeff?
Yeah, so that's pretty, like I say, pretty wild there. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's I don't need much more. I didn't even need this to know that, the elections, it's always been voting for me in this country. It's always been when you see the proportion of the people that's required, how many people rely on the status quo. To me, I've always suspected that the elections are not, you're not going to gain your freedoms, right? I just can't help but continue to mention, and I'll continue to post on the social media accounts that, yeah, just vote harder, Canada. Right? I'll be right here waiting when you're disappointed in the next election as well, or at least anyone that's challenging the status quo. Anyway, it looks like I got someone new to the stream here. The pattern with politicians using lawyer-client confidentiality to cover up information will continue in Canada. Yeah, right on, Earth-based one. I'm hearing you there big time. Public servants have more privacy rights than taxpayers. Totally backwards. Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? Even by using that term, public servants. I mean, who are they serving? It isn't the public, or at least not those of us in the public who actually care about integrity, principles, right? Genuine freedom and liberty, the respect for the rule of law, all of those things. I mean, recent years have been blatantly obvious and glaringly true that it's ruled by edict, folks. It's ruled by edict. That's the thing. They use lots of legalese and political language to convince you, and they'll bring on experts. They'll do these little dog and pony shows in these reports to make the average unsuspecting Canadian think, well, at least there's something there, some mechanism to hold, power to account. No, it's all illusion, folks. It really is just a big dog and pony show. I'm hoping that more and more Canadians will join people like us and start to finally realize that, because things seem to be only getting worse. Now, that's in terms of politics. In terms of your personal life and your social life and what you can do to put yourself in a positive space and in your mind, there's positive areas in that regard. So don't let things get you beat down too bad, folks, because it's just going to play out the way it's going to play out. And, you got to live between now and then too. So enjoy yourself at least to the best you can. And I'm still going to keep hammering away at the message is you got to reach out to people that you know, at least the people who have any kind of respect for you at all, and try to, don't beat them over the head with the information, but, just kind of lead them to it in some way. So maybe they start to get properly educated and informed in terms of what's the real world, what's really behind the curtain, right? Because I think once most of them do, or at least a sizable portion of them do, like I say, I think even that, I think most humans have at least a conscience enough to be like, yeah, evil might benefit me now, but if I keep supporting evil, wow, it could really turn around and bite me in the ass, right? And that's just the truth of the matter, folks. Anyways, thanks for you folks that did join the live stream. I really appreciate that.